लाइट लाओ ना इकडची.
Hi, Rupesh.
Hey, hi Chetan, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Hey.
Good afternoon.
Yeah,
For
for
you,
me it
it's
is good afternoon.
what, 2 o'clock?
Yeah, it's
2?
2 o'clock, right?
Okay, okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, uh, how was your weekend? I mean, your entire week, I would say.
Yeah,
Weekend just started for you.
weekend just started.
Yeah.
Week so far was good. Bit busy, but can't complain, right? You need to be busy in the week so that you can enjoy the weekends.
That's correct. That's right.
Okay, so I'm sharing this my screen, and I'm also recording this session, right? So I'll be sharing it with you on that portal.
Yes, yes.
Okay?
And yeah.
Hmm?
Chetan, just one more thing I wanted to confirm. I mean, just going through last week about the interview questions and answers from Google in Google.
Right.
So they have provided answers. It's like definition wise, the language use was very difficult. Okay. So in
What is that?
actual,
Can you
while
repeat that? Can you repeat that?
the answers they have used, no answers, question answers, I was
Hmm?
going through
Hmm?
re Scrum Master interview question answer.
Okay, okay. The one I sent you?
No, 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 not that one. I have checked that also, but prior to that, I was checking other question answers which were available on website in Google.
Okay, okay. Through Google. Okay, got it.
So I found that the answers were very difficult. The language used was very difficult. The questions, it's like a definition sort of thing. So I mean, my confusion is while giving interview, do I
Hmm.
have to use the same kind of words, or I can explain the way you are explaining to me? I can use same language which you are going to explain me, the simple one.
Correct.
That will be
See,
right, right?
exactly. See, the way that document is the one I gave you
Hmm.
is from a real world perspective, right? If I were to interview someone, what kind of answer do I expect? I don't want to listen to a definition, right?
Hmm.
Like if you ask me, let's say, what is a use case?
Hmm.
There are two ways I can explain that. One is what is in the theory, okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
and then I can give my own perspective, what I understand, what is a use case, using some examples. So you need
Yes,
to use the second approach because that is when I will be convinced that you know what you are speaking. I mean,
exactly.
anybody can come up with a definition, can memorize it and tell me, but
That's right.
if that person is not understanding the essence of it, it's of no meaning,
Hmm.
right? It's of no use.
Yes, yes. So, I mean, what I am planning is now, when you will teach me, obviously you will
Mm.
explain me, right?
Yeah, of course.
So, I will go through your videos in
Hmm.
weekdays, and I
Yeah,
will make a question answer sort of documentation. In that,
hmm,
I will use the same language which you have used while explaining to me,
hmm,
because I have
correct.
understood that only, and I can explain to other person in the same way. That will be easy for me also.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
So, I
we
mean,
are not writing an exam like fifth grade exam, right?
right,
Where you have
right,
to.
right. Yes,
So,
that's what I feel when I go through this documents and all. I feel like the same. I have the same kind of feeling.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that is exactly what you should be doing. As a
Uh,
professional, as a seasoned IT professional, you don't want to give a bookish definition to
right,
someone, right? You need to give your own perspective, what you think, not what
right.
that book has written.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Yeah.
Anybody can read from Google and tell me what is a use case or what is a user story and all that. But I don't want
Yes,
to listen that.
yes. Right,
Okay.
right. Okay. Now I got. Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, welcome.
Okay. So
Okay,
fine.
so
Yeah.
we'll start with module one, which will be, as I said, we'll start with the basic concepts of SDLC, what are different phases, then we'll go, from there. We'll talk about the waterfall and then we will go to Agile and we'll focus on Agile, of course, but we need to talk about some more frameworks because, when you understand waterfall, then you will appreciate the Agile, right? Without knowing waterfall, you will just say,
Hmm.
oh, Agile is just a way of doing things. Scrum is okay, what's a big deal? It's a framework, right? But when you know the hardships or the pain points we had in waterfall, then you will say, oh wow, Agile is really helping us, or Scrum is really helping us, giving some solutions to the customer.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start with the first one, which is the SDLC concept.
Mhm.
Now, I know you have worked in IT for a couple of years, for quite some time. So I would like to just quickly understand from your perspective, what
Hmm.
you think about SDLC.
Uh, HDLC development life cycle, you mean to say,
Yes,
right?
software development life cycle or
Yes. I
solution
mean,
development life cycle.
uh, I mean, I have 13 years of experience and I never worked in development as such, but
Mhm,
I heard about it,
mhm,
about development life cycle. It's like if you wanted to develop any software, so first we have to gather information from the customer,
mhm,
okay, and you
mhm,
have to make sure that whatever information you have gathered is correct as per your understanding and customer's understanding. Once you got fixed information, then you will make sure that you have all the required softwares in order to develop that particular application, okay, and you have all kind of permissions and all kind of licenses handy. Then you will go down and you will find some technical people if who are going to work on that particular application,
mhm.
and then you will inform to customer that we have everything in handy, and as per estimation we are going to complete this task or this whatever is thing into a fixed into some certain amount of time within certain duration, and then
Okay,
we will deliver to customer.
okay, okay. Fair enough. So you kind of have some idea about SDLC, which is good. So let's explore more on that. Okay,
Okay.
we'll go into detail and see what exactly is SDLC. So SDLC, software development lifecycle or solution development lifecycle. You can also call it system development lifecycle, right? Doesn't matter. Um, but this is a way we break down the entire big project into different phases. So now, since I used the term project, let's focus on that first for a bit. Right?
Mhm.
Project. What is a project? Project is a temporary effort, right, which we take to deliver something. Most of the cases, in our case, it will be an IT part, right? Whether it will be a new piece of software, a system application, or we are enhancing existing application by adding new features into it. Like we use software on a daily basis. Right now, we are using a software, right, to have this meeting. We're using Go to Training. That's a software. We use email application. Probably you already used it in the morning. You checked your emails. You checked your online banking account. Maybe you checked your pictures on some portal, right? All
Mhm.
these are examples of software which we use almost every day, and at a regular interval. So a software is being delivered as a project, correct? So
Mhm.
you are, I think, mainly involved in the production support, I think, or
Yes, yes. I was into
production.
production support. I never been in development.
Correct. So see, what will happen is that initially when the project is conceptualized, that means if somebody says, hey, I want this software, right?
Hmm.
In that case, there is nothing. So we have to build it, correct? And once we build it, then it goes into what we call the O&M mode, operation and maintenance mode, where people will just maintain it. It's like, you want to buy a car, right?
Okay,
Somebody has to
okay.
make it first, correct?
Right, right,
Only when they make it, you can buy it. And once you buy it, you have to maintain it,
right,
isn't it?
right.
Correct. If I want to buy a vehicle, I have to go to the dealership. They have made that vehicle, and I come back with a vehicle, and then I have to maintain it, make sure that the gas is there, oil, all the fluids are there. Then the vehicle, I mean, all the tires have right pressure and all that.
Hmm.
Same thing with a software, that we have to build it first, and once it's built, we have to maintain it. So this whole process of building a software is contained within this STLC process.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
So
Hmm.
SDLC is nothing but the way we break down this whole project into different phases. wherein the project goal is to build a software for someone, whether it's an external customer, internal customer, doesn't matter. We build it for someone and then we give it to them so that they can start using it.
Hmm.
So
Right.
the entire project is divided into different phases, and each phase will have its own set of activities, will have its own set of expertise required. That means people with right skills.
Hmm.
We will need to create some artifacts. When I say artifacts, some work products, some documents, drawings. It can also be a piece of code, right? And we need to have some checkpoints at the end of each phase.
Hmm.
So, for example, we start with phase one, or let's say we did the first initial phase of the project.
Hmm.
At the end of that phase, before we go to the next phase, we need to make sure that all the activities have been done. They have been done as per the quality we agreed upon. All the artifacts are created, and only then we move to the next phase. Okay, so
Hmm.
that way we know that we are going in the right direction. Now, this SDLC has different phases, right from pre-project phase to initiation phase, planning phase, requirements gathering phase, design phase, development phase, testing phase, and then we have a deployment phase, and then it comes O&M, operations and maintenance, and that's where you mostly worked in the production support. Once a system was live and people were using it, any
Hmm.
problems, issues they were facing, you're helping them resolve it.
Okay.
Okay.
Hmm.
Now this SDLC is more of a framework than a methodology. Now what I mean is that there are two things here. SDLC, all the phases which we are going to see, they are common, right from pre-project phase to initiation planning, requirements, design, development, testing. All of these will be there irrespective of the type of SDLC uh, or software engineering framework you are going to use or methodology you are going to use. So it's like saying that, okay, we have a, automobile, but
Hmm.
automobile can be, it can be Nissan, it can be, let's say automobile car, right? It can be
Hmm.
Nissan's, it can be Honda, Hyundai, Mercedes, Benz, right? Jeep, it can be BMW. Similar to that, we are saying, okay, SDLC is a concept, is a framework where all, wherein it will have all these phases, but then there are different ways we can do the same phases, and that is what we'll be talking about in the next topic. You have waterfall, you have rapid application development, you have RUP, rational unified process, then you have spiral, and we have Scrum, Kanban, all of these.
Okay.
Okay, so one is right now. First, let's look at the all the generic phases that will happen irrespective of which type of SDLC framework you are going to select.
So SDLC we can say is like a methodology, and in order to develop those softwares, we have different frameworks, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
You can select, okay, do I want waterfall? Do I want this? Do I
Okay.
want rapid application development? Right? You can select any of these. Right.
Okay.
Same like, you want a car, but then what type of car you want, you will select based on what you need, what your requirements are.
Okay.
Correct? So ultimately, the goal of using an SDLC is to make sure that we do the project in a right way. We have different parts of the project aligned to each other. We have the right set of skills or right expertise on the team. We create the right artifacts. We do the right activities so that we can deliver a high quality application for our customer so that that meets or exceeds the customer expectations.
Okay.
Okay. Now let's take a look at this SDLC. It's like a generic SDLC, right? It doesn't have to be I'm not talking about a specific, software engineering methodology here. I'm just saying, irrespective of which one you use, it will have all these phases involved. Now, how you do those will depend on the type of software engineering framework you're using.
Okay.
Okay. So this is typically you will see, every project which is involved in building a software application will go through these phases, right? No matter what, whether you're building, um, a software for a finance domain, or you're building for the airlines, or you are doing, like what we are using, go to training, your online banking, email application, whatever you do, irrespective of that, all these applications will go through these phases when we build them. So the first one is initiation. So if you see initiation, concept development, planning, requirements, design, development, testing, implementation, O&M, and then disposition. So let's go one by one. So initiation phase is when things gets started, when we think about something needs to be done. Okay. So this is not where we kind of invest a lot of resources in the initiation phase. It is just that, somebody thinks about an idea and get the ball rolling. So
Okay.
let's say there's a bank out there and they are facing problems in terms of, let's say processing loans faster. And recently they realized that they are losing customers because uh, of the competition. The competition is doing it in, like, let's say 1 week, but this bank is taking 15 days to process one loan, right? And it's a highly competitive environment. And if everything else is same, like, they're giving you the same rate of interest, and all the other terms and conditions are similar, why would customers stick to this bank, which is taking 15 days, as compared to other banks, which takes only 1 week or 5 days?
Mm.
So they're losing customers based on that. So do you think the management is going to just sit and relax and see things uh, like this? They will just
No,
watch. They will take
no.
action, correct?
Right, right.
They will say, maybe they will have a meeting with the right stakeholders, the right people, and say, hey, we need to do something about this. What is going on? Let's think, let's talk, right?
Mm.
So this is when the project gets initiated. Or think about it, the seed is planted. We need, when we want to, let's say, have some trees in our yard or something, what do you do first? You put a seed in it, right?
Right,
Same thing here. We need to have that seed planted so that we can grow it and we can have a product out of it.
correct.
So this is when somebody from that division or department will think about it. They will engage the right stakeholders and say, hey, we have a problem. We need to solve it, right?
Uh,
And
the stakeholder is like exactly stakeholder meaning is what? I mean, it's like an
uh,
head of that particular department, you mean to say?
okay, uh,
Stakeholder.
so let me explain that, and we will, maybe tomorrow we'll just focus on stakeholders. Okay, once we talk this. See, a
Sure, sure.
stakeholder is any person who is going to get impacted by this project or will be impacting this project. So in this case, let's say the project is to, have a system in place so that they can, or the customers can process their applications electronically, right?
Mm.
Think about it, like you are in the bank and you realize that, hey, my customers are complaining that they don't have, they are taking, I mean, we are taking 3 weeks to process their loan application. Why? Because they don't have right tools. They don't have any application to do it, right? So we need to solve this problem. And just to think about it, what is the best way to solve this problem? To give them the right tool, correct?
Right, right, right.
Right? A no-brainer that we have to build a right tool so that my customers as well as my bank employees can do everything electronically.
Mm.
So when we think about that, uh, the stakeholder would be any person who is involved in this project of building this online banking or online loan processing system, um, will be our stakeholder. Any person who is impacted or will get impacted, I mean, will impact the project both ways.
So stakeholder can be multiple persons
Oh
because
yeah,
many people are
exactly.
getting infected.
Yeah,
It's like a end user stakeholder is nothing but
exactly. End
it's
users can also be a stakeholder. A
okay,
bank employee will also be a stakeholder, right?
okay,
A person who is heading this loan department will also be a stakeholder,
okay, okay, okay.
right? Any person who is either getting impacted from this product or from this project rather, or is impacting it, will be a stakeholder.
Mm,
And tomorrow we'll just focus on the stakeholder because I know it's a pretty vast discussion we can have on that, and we need
okay.
to know you, or rather you need to know exactly who's a stakeholder because you will be responsible for working with them, right? You have to work with them, so you need to know in and out who are my stakeholders, and there are different, you call it level of stakeholders depending on their authority, depending on their responsibility. It might change, right? You need to manage some stakeholders more closely than others,
Okay, okay.
correct? Like in your case, from your experience, your stakeholders were end users mainly who would report some problems and you were responsible for fixing them,
Right.
right? But
Mhm.
then uh, your stakeholders were also the development team who would have helped you to resolve. Let's say that you got a ticket from a customer, end user. Hey, I cannot do this. I cannot see my data. Something. You try
Mm,
to fix it, but let's say you are not able to fix it. So
mm,
most likely you escalated it to the next level,
mm,
right? And then that person or the group of people would have fixed it by going into the code or doing some research or fixing the code, something.
mm.
So even they are stakeholders because they were involved in this whole thing.
No, but they are not generating, I mean, they are not creating ticket, no?
No,
They
they
are
are
not
not
the
creating,
affected people, right?
though they are not creating, but was there a scenario where you had to escalate it to the next level where they had to do some background, I mean, backend updates, they had to go into the database and fix it, or they had to
Mm,
go and look into the database or code and get some data to you?
okay.
Was
So
there
I
any
think
scenario?
yes, yes, yes. There is a scenario, but I will be stakeholder for them. I think in such a scenario because I
Everybody is a
am not.
stakeholder. No, that doesn't matter. Everybody is a stakeholder. Think about it. Anyone who is involved in this whole in resolving the ticket is a stakeholder.
Okay, okay,
Okay, but then we need to think about it. Okay, who is what? Who is playing what role? That is also important.
okay.
Okay, that we'll talk about that tomorrow because
Sure, sure.
as I said, it's a vast discussion. We don't want to mix this and that.
Yeah, definitely. Sure.
But you're clear right now who's a
Yes,
stakeholder at a high level?
yes, 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 yes. Now I got an idea.
Okay. So the first thing is initiation, where um, that let's say the loan department head of the loan department initiates this concept or floats the idea of building this online application, loan application. Okay,
Okay.
and of course, to build this application, it's not that it's going to be built in like $1,000, $2,000, right? It will take a lot of money, a lot of resources will be involved in building this. And
Okay.
most of the times, what happens, in a company, the funds are limited. So it's not that this guy wants it and he or she will get it, right?
Mm,
No
mm,
company will just give money to this person just because he or she wants it,
right.
right?
Mm,
You need to justify why you need it, and is it
mm,
going to help the company or not? If yes, in which way, how much it's going to help, like that. So
right.
the
It's like
management is,
mm,
hmm?
No, it's like I have to, I mean, the person have to provide estimation, or person have
Exactly,
to provide distribution of money, where and how
correct.
he's going to
Exactly.
expense. Okay.
The main thing is they are to do the cost benefit. Okay, we call it a cost benefit analysis. Like, what is it going to cost, and what is the benefit it's going to give back,
Okay.
right? Now, if let's say you are a loan department head, right? Let's do the role playing.
Hmm.
You are the head of the loan department, and you are under pressure that customers are not coming and getting loans from your department.
Hmm.
So you will take some action, right? You will say, hey, let's meet and see what's happening. And you determine that because the customers don't have the tool, uh, they are not willing to come and do business with this bank. So you say, okay, let's solve the problem. We will build a tool. We will build an online application which will be used by the customers and by my department to process a loan so that we can at least do it in 1 week or so,
Okay.
right? Now you float this idea, and let's say I'm the um, CEO of this bank.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now you come to me
Hmm.
with this idea.
Hmm.
I need to know, you know, what exactly are we talking? How much money is involved? What is the benefit it's going to give to the bank, right? Um,
Hmm.
in terms of quantitative benefit, qualitative benefit, correct?
Hmm.
Then I also need to know how much time it's going to take to build this,
Right.
right? And do we have any other option like building a new software from the ground, from the scratch, as compared to going for a COTS package, right?
Okay.
I will ask these questions to you. Have you
Hmm.
think about, have you thought about implementing a COTS package? You know, right, what a COTS is? Commercial off the
Uh,
shelf.
you
Like
mean to say existing packages? I
exactly, which are already built by companies. You just have to buy it, configure it, and you can start using it.
Okay. Okay.
Like
Okay.
SAP, right? Um,
Yes. Yes.
SAP is
SAP have a
one example.
ERP. ERP is like we can consider as a
Exactly,
cost package because
exactly.
it has
Yeah,
all
correct.
modules. Okay.
So you still have to configure a little bit. You can
Right.
customize the code a little bit, but by and large, it's there. You don't have to do anything, right?
Hmm.
You probably you might have done this tax filing, right? You have softwares. You can buy it from the market. There are different types of software you can buy, and you can file your tax using that. You don't have to do anything. You just have to create your account, and you can start using them,
Hmm.
right? So as a CEO of the bank, I will ask you these questions, and you have to come and convince me that yes, this project of implementing this online loan application is worth doing it, right? Because
Okay.
as a CEO, I might be getting so many requests from other departments for doing this kind of work. And as I said, the resources are limited. I cannot be giving money to everybody,
Hmm.
right? You say, okay, I want $10 million to implement this project. Other department will come here, I want $20 million to implement this. Another person will say, I want $15 million to implement it. I mean, wish this bank had so much of money, but the fact is, every organization has limited resources. They can't be just giving it based on someone's request, right? We are not talking $5, $10 or $20. We are talking like in millions.
Okay.
So there's a document which we called a business case document, which will be created by you because you are the person who wants this project to be done, right?
Right.
You are playing the role of a head of this department, loan department. Now
Correct.
you are the biggest stakeholder. You want this system to be built so that customers and your department can start using it. So no one else will be more interested than you,
Right.
correct?
Hmm.
Because you are getting the maximum benefit out of this project. You
Okay.
in the sense your department.
Department. Loan
Okay.
department.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So you will have to justify and convince me that this project is worth doing it. And that's when you will create a document called a business case document, which will have some high level requirements of this project or high level capabilities, what all features this system will support, what are the benefits it's going to give in terms of quantitative benefits, qualitative benefits. When I say
Hmm.
quantitative, okay, the company will get this much of more revenue, right?
Hmm.
Qualitative will be customers will be more happy to do
Hmm.
business with us, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Then what are the cost involved, right? Well, that is important. How much money it's going to take to build this in terms of like whether it's whatever currency you want to use, but the main thing is the total cost. Now this is approximate cost, okay? Because see, software is a bit complicated to estimate. Now
Okay.
it's easy to estimate. Let's say if I tell you to give me an estimate to build a 4 by 4 room, right? Let's say
Hmm.
4 feet length, 4 feet width, and let's say 10 feet height. If I
Hmm.
give you these dimensions and I tell you I want a wall with a brick and a white color, it's easy to estimate because
Hmm.
I've given you all the dimensions. You can go to the market, say, okay, how much it's going to take to hire a labor, how many bricks I need, how much of paint I need, and
Hmm.
right, you can give me the estimate right to the cent.
Right.
But a software is not like that. Software is like, somebody's working on it, and we don't know until they start working how complex it is,
Okay.
right? Now, of course, we have to some things are standard. Like for example, if we are talking about let's say an application which is going to help you check your emails, right?
Hmm.
At a very high level, I know what all features it will have, so we can estimate for those. But
Hmm.
when we start really working on the project, when we start getting the requirements, then we will find more complexity involved, and the estimates can go high or can also come down depending on the scenario.
And also it will affect if I wanted to create a new software, or do I have to make changes in my existing
Existing
softwares?
one, correct, right?
So that will again made a major difference, right?
That's correct. Yeah. So the
Okay.
point is, estimating is very complex in IT, in software. But still, we have to give some estimates. Otherwise, what are we approving, right? I don't know. As a CEO, I don't know. Am I approving $1 million worth of project, 10 million, or 100 million? Correct. I need to
Okay.
have some ballpark figure. Hey, this project is going to cost around like $10 million, right? It can go plus minus here and there, but on an average, it should take around that much of money. So you come to me with this whole document, which will have all of this. Um, and also, as I said, you can also put some options. Option one, we build a custom software from scratch. Option two, we go with a COTS package and give me
Hmm.
the rates. Okay, if we go with the option one, that is build a software, it's going to cost us this much money, right? If we go with a COTS package, it's going to cost us this much money. What are the risks involved in both, right?
Hmm.
All
Hmm.
of that. You give it to me, I take a look at it, and you know, let's say I like it, I will approve it. I'll say, go ahead, um, we'll do this project, right?
Okay. Hmm.
So in that case, now you have an approval from me to go ahead and start working on it,
Hmm.
correct? Now, if let's say there are multiple people involved in the review board, then definitely we need to have concurrence from all of those, and then they will tell you, hey, Rupesh, you can go ahead and start the project. We approve this project, and you will get the funds,
Okay.
right? Now,
Hmm.
let's take a happy path. That means you get the approval, and you
Hmm.
are given green signal to go to the next phase.
Yes, right.
So, okay, the exception path is you don't get approval, we don't go forward. Simple,
Right.
right? It's like, my child comes, hey, I want this toy. I say, no, we are not buying it, right? That's the end
Hmm.
of the story. So
Hmm.
there's no deal there. But if I decide, okay, yeah, let's go and buy, we will buy during Thanksgiving, then we can go and think about, okay, from where to buy all of that,
Correct.
right? So it's the same thing here. If the project is not approved, we don't worry about the next steps. But yes, let's take a happy path. The project gets approved. What happens? We go to the planning phase. Now, planning phase is where the actual project has begun, right? Until your business case document is not approved, there is no project. We are just trying to get a project. Okay.
Okay.
Only when the project gets approved, we have to start planning.
Correct.
So we call up until this point a pre-project phase, or some people also call it discovery phase. So it's the same thing, whether it's a pre-project or a discovery phase. You are trying to get this project approved so that you can start the project.
Okay. So before I got approval for project, I mean, before I get a green signal, it
Mhm.
is the phase all the phase which was there, that was pre-phase or
Pre-project, yeah, we call it
pre-project
a
phase.
pre-project. That means there is no project. Before the project, we have to do these things.
Right. Okay.
And sometimes, uh, to do the pre-project phase, they might hire a business analyst to work on it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we'll talk more on the roles now since we are getting into the project. But yeah, up until this point, we call it a pre-project discovery phase. Once it's approved, then we start planning. Okay, now planning is when the project manager, right, or the scrum master will be involved. Now, since we are focusing more on the scrum master and product owner roles, right, I'll kind of keep referring to those terms here.
Okay.
So planning, we plan things, we plan the whole project. Whether, let's say, we are following Waterfall or we are following Scrum, no matter which framework we are following, we need to plan things before we start the project. I mean, before we start coding. The project has already initiated, right? We are in the planning phase, but we want to plan it. We want to see, okay, how many resources will be required. For that, I need to know what are the features we are going to support. The system is going to support. Then we have to talk about how many resources will be required. What all activities will be done, right? What all artifacts will be created as part of the project, so that we can plan the whole project and the subsequent phases.
Right.
Okay. Now, right now, we are just thinking in a very generic terms, irrespective of whether it's a waterfall or Scrum, we need to plan things, right? It doesn't really change the type of framework you're going to use. Yes, it will change the extent of planning you're going to do if you're going to do waterfall versus agile. In waterfall, you plan the whole project. Let's say the project is going to, take 1 year. Approximately, it's going to take 1 year to implement. So we have to do the planning for the whole year.
Oh, okay.
Compare that with Scrum. We don't plan for the whole project. We plan as we go forward. So you plan for 3 months or 4 months. And then for the remaining, we have a roadmap. We call a product roadmap or release roadmap. But as we come closer, we will again plan the details and keep doing it. Technically, it's called rolling wave planning.
Okay.
Okay. So, and same thing, we do it in our day-to-day life, right? We don't plan like 10 years down the line what we are going to do,
We never
right?
we never
Not even,
plan. Right.
yeah, we don't plan that long. Forget about 10 years, even 1 year from now, I don't know what I'm going to be doing, right? Whether I will be on vacation, whether I'll be working, what we don't know. It's so uncertain, right? But I know at least I will plan for next 3-4 days, right? So
Right.
today I'm going to do training. Tomorrow I have a training. I have a lunch with someone, and then evening I have to go to temple. I plan at least like 2-3 days ahead. I don't plan like beyond that because we don't know what's going to happen,
Mm,
right? Of
mm.
course, if you have, let's say, December, I'm planning a vacation for a week. Up until then, that's okay. But 6 months down the line, will I be taking vacation? We don't know what's going to happen,
Never.
right? So the
Mm.
same thing here. We don't plan if we are in agile mode. We don't plan that long. We plan for like couple of months, and then as we come closer, we again plan for the next couple of months.
Okay.
So planning typically will be done by the project manager, whether it's a waterfall, Scrum, no matter what, you have a PM, and then you will have a Scrum Master involved if it's a agile.
Okay.
Now here is the thing. If you look at the theory, in agile, in Scrum, there is no PM role. Okay, so a lot of people ask me, hey, you told me that, or I've heard in Scrum there is no PM role. That is correct. There is no project manager role if you look at the theory. But in my
Mm,
10 years of experience in agile, and I've
mm.
been using this framework since 2010, I've never seen a single project where you don't have a PM.
Okay.
PM, you have a Scrum Master. PM is more at a top level. Scrum Master is more at a sprint level,
Okay.
right? So you understand the term sprint?
Sprint level, ground level.
Forget it. That's okay.
Mm,
Don't worry about it. But right now, think about it. Whether it's a waterfall, Scrum, or whatever, you need a PM. In real world, you will see a project manager who will be responsible for a couple of things. Making
okay.
sure that the project is done as per the plan, right? The project is done um, within the scope.
Mm,
When I say scope, that means what work we agreed to, we are doing that. We are not doing anything additional. Second
mm.
thing, the project is done on time. That is, if we committed that this project is going to take 6 months, we want to make sure that as a PM, we are delivering it in 6 months,
Okay. Okay.
correct? And the third thing is the cost or the budget. If we committed to the customer that this project is going to cost you $1 million, we must deliver within that budget. I cannot go back and say, yeah, I told you 1 million, but now it's going to take $2 million.
But if, as you said earlier, as a software development is uncertain, right?
Mhm.
So we cannot estimate 100, I mean, accurate amount.
Correct.
So in that case, here also we cannot provide accurate amount. I mean, as the example which you gave to me, I cannot estimate you 100, fix accurate
That's
amount,
correct.
how much,
That's correct.
whether it is 1 million only or 2 million, you know.
Okay, two things here. One is when we give estimate to the customer, okay,
Hmm.
we give ROMs. You can write these terms, right? ROMs, rough order of magnitude.
Okay.
So what it means is in the PM terms, we are giving an approximate cost to the customer that it's going to cost you, let's say if I give you $10 million,
Hmm.
right? And if I tell you these are ROMs, rough order of magnitude, that means it has a variance. Okay, it can go down by 20-25%, or it can also go up by I think 70%. Yeah, 60 to 70%. Right? Because we are talking at a high level.
Hmm.
Okay, that is one thing. So always when I give ROMs, it is understood that it will vary by some margin. It can go down sometimes, it can go up also by a certain degree. As I said, 30% it can go down, 20-30%, it can go up to 60-70%. So if I tell you I will charge you $100, if I tell you ROM, it's a ROM. It can be $80, it can be $180.
Okay.
Second thing, I will give assumptions that hey, this estimate is based on the current understanding. If something changes, the estimate will change,
Okay.
right? And the third thing is, once we start the project, typically what the deal is, once we get into the planning phase, a lot of times we do, a detailed study or what we call LOE, level of effort analysis. That will be done by the BA. And if you have any other resources on the team, when I say BA, business analyst, what will happen is they will take the high level requirements and they will start defining the detailed requirements. And based on that, the team will come up with an LOE, level of effort it's going to take to implement that requirement. So these are more accurate than the ROMs.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Right?
Okay. So while giving you an estimation, I must take into account all these three factors:
Which three?
the ROMs,
Correct.
ROMs,
ROMs,
assumptions, and the LOE.
LOE, correct.
Okay.
Right?
Got it.
Now,
Yeah.
as I said, the planning is mainly the responsibility of project manager,
Project
right?
manager. Hmm.
Right? He or she will make sure that we know how many resources are required, what type of activities we'll be doing, when we will be doing, the sequence in which we'll be doing all of that. And he or she is responsible for doing the project on time, right? In scope, on budget. That's a
Hmm.
primary responsibility of a PM. Of course, apart from that, they are also responsible for making sure that people are working. There are no technical glitches, or people are getting along. There are no issues. Correct,
Hmm.
all of those.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, the next phase is requirements phase.
Okay.
Now, requirements is where the the business analyst will be responsible for gathering or eliciting the requirements from the customers, from the end users, from the SMEs, subject matter experts,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? They will be responsible for eliciting, gathering, then they will be analyzing the requirements, studying them,
Hmm.
and making sure that the requirements which they are getting from the stakeholders, they are
Hmm.
aligned to the actual need of the customer. That is, in this case, you want this online loan application, correct?
Right.
So
Hmm.
when the BA is doing the requirements, he or she will ensure that all the requirements they are getting, they are aligned to that goal of building that online banking or online loan application.
Hmm.
Okay,
Okay.
and they will create a bunch of other artifacts, which again, as a Scrum Master, you really don't need to know at this point of time. But they will be creating different artifacts that will be capturing all the requirements that are part of that online loan application.
Okay.
Right? Any questions, concerns so far?
No. No. I understood.
Okay. Okay. Then comes the design.
So,
Now, yeah,
sorry to interrupt you. So,
go.
in requirement gathering, requirement analysis, we only business analyst will be involved. In short, right?
BA
He
will be
will.
the prime person who will be doing it, but he or she may also involve, technical team members sometimes.
Okay. Okay.
So
SMEs
that
and all.
yes, SMEs will be there always because we want to understand what they want from the system, correct? So we need to know what is going on, what they need from the new system. So we will
Hmm.
need SMEs. We may also talk to the end users who are going to actually use the application.
Hmm. Hmm.
So they will be talking to different types of stakeholders
Hmm.
uh, and then understand what their requirements are, capture them in some document, and that will be used by the other team members to do their job.
Okay.
So in the design phase is mainly done by architect, solution architect, system architect, where they will take all the requirements that were done in the requirements by the BA, and they will translate them into, a system architecture, like what type of front end language is going to be used, what type of back end we are going to use, database, how are we going to communicate across different components of the same application, or if this application has to talk to a different application, how that communication will happen. Will it be through a service-oriented architecture framework, microservices, or whether it will be through, EDI transaction, right? Those kind of things. So as a Scrum Master or product owner, you don't need to go into how aspect, how that's going to happen. That's purely responsibility of an architect to design the application architecture.
Okay, so he will take care of all technical perspective,
Correct.
technical
Yeah.
approaches. Okay.
Okay. Then comes the development phase. So once the architect has laid out the architecture, then the development can begin.
Hmm.
Without the architecture, we cannot start the development. We need to have the basic, foundation there. We need to have the infrastructure ready so that the development can start uh, based on that.
Okay.
Right?
Hmm.
Similar to a house, right? We cannot start constructing a house without an architecture,
Okay. Right.
right?
Hmm.
So architect will create a design, right? Maybe it's on a piece of paper or on a software, but we need to know the entire architecture of the house, right? How much of like the plot will be, then where the foundation will be, the beams will be, what are the dimensions of the house. All of that we need
Hmm.
to know before we start building it.
Hmm.
Same thing here. We need to have the architecture ready before the code starts or coding begins.
Hmm.
So development will be done by the developer, right? Simple.
Developers. Right.
Programmers, coders, developers, they start coding based on the requirements which the BA came up with. So all the requirements will be taken as an input by the architect, by the developer to do their respective job. So developers will be taking the requirements which the BA wrote, and they will start coding based on that so that the system behaves as per the requirements. The logic is written based on the requirements. So for example, if a BA came up with a requirement saying uh, the user can select the parameters and the and they will be able to generate a report out of it.
Hmm.
So the developer will write the code in such a way that the system behaves or functions as per the requirement.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Now the coding can be done in any language. We don't really care or we don't need to know as a Scrum Master product owner. It can be Python, it can be Ruby on Rails, Java, .NET, C, C++, COBOL, it doesn't matter.
But again, that will be, I mean, that information is provide to him, to developer, is by design. And
Exactly.
design
Yeah,
itself decide all the languages, everything.
exactly. Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. The
correct.
requirements. Yeah.
In the design phase, it will be all decided and the developers will follow that based on the architecture.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay. Now comes test integration and testing. So what it means is that let's say developer wrote their code and now we need to make sure that the code that was written by a developer is in fact based on the requirements, or in other words, the system is behaving as per the requirements the BA wrote. Correct?
Hmm.
So see, even though the developer will do some basic testing, they do unit testing. A unit testing is a very small set of testing the developer will do to ensure that their piece of code is working fine.
Okay.
Right? It's a very like at a very micro level, they are doing the testing. So they won't be focusing anything beyond what they wrote. So if I wrote like 20 lines of code, a very simplistic example, right? If I
Hmm.
wrote 20 lines of code, I will only ensure that those 20 lines of code are working fine.
Hmm.
But beyond that, we don't like a developer will not go and test it because that's not the scope of unit testing. That's the
Okay.
job of a tester to test whether that functionality is working. Plus, beyond that, is it integrated with all the other components and nothing else is breaking, right? So in the testing phase, the tester or the quality assurance analyst will be responsible for a few things. One is to ensure that the system is behaving as per the requirements which were given by the BA. Or in other words,
Uh,
the coding has been done
you mean to
as
say,
per the requirements.
uh,
Yeah,
yeah. See, what I understood is developer will develop. For example, as you told me earlier, he
yeah,
will develop 20 lines of code. Okay,
mhm,
for example, and he himself will do unit testing on it,
correct.
right? And when then, I mean, if he is doing testing on the 20 lines, then what is the use of tester? I mean,
Okay, tester will test from uh, at a more broad level. Let me put it that way. See, the job of a tester is not to test the code. They will think from an end user perspective, right? They will say, okay, this feature has been added into the system. Now let me go and test whether it's working as per the requirements which were written by the BA.
oh, okay,
Okay, so though they don't go to the code and check whether the code is working fine or not, they will
hmm,
go to the actual system, the front end, the
hmm,
UI, and they will see if this feature is working as per the requirements or not.
okay,
So here is a concept of a white box and black box testing. So a developer will always be doing a white box testing.
okay,
That means they will be looking at the code to see if it's working fine or not. But
okay,
a tester will not go into that level of detail. I mean, they won't go into a white box testing. They won't go at a code level and test. They will see from the user perspective if the system has been, I mean, if the user needs to invoke a certain feature, right? Let's say a login capability.
hmm,
A tester will go into the UI, they will enter the ID password and see if they are able to log in or not,
okay, okay, okay,
right? And also they will see if after logging in, they are able to see their account or they are not.
got it,
After logging in, if they cannot see their account, that means there's a problem, there's a bug in the system,
okay,
right? A developer will not do that. Developer will only say, okay, I enter the ID password, I pass these variables, and it's hitting the right database tables. That's it, I'm done,
okay.
right? So
So, so that will be a white box.
that's a white
You
box.
understand?
A
Okay.
black box is they don't go to the code level and do that. They look at from the black box perspective. That means they give an input, right? The system will do some processing, it will do the magic and give the output back. So a tester is not really looking at the code to see what's happening behind the scene.
Okay.
Okay, that is what we call a black box.
Hmm.
And we do this always. Like you want to check, let's say you want to check your email. What do? You enter your ID password and
Yes.
you don't care what's going on behind the scene, right?
Right.
Where your ID password is going and validated, how it's going into the server and getting all the new emails. If you delete, what's happening, in which file it's going and getting stored.
Hmm. That all that will automatically went into trash.
Correct. But
Hmm.
in the at the back end, in the code level, we don't really care, right? You give
Correct.
a system, you tell the system, hey, I select this email, I want to delete it, and click on a button, it gets deleted.
Hmm.
Now, where it's getting deleted, where it's storing, we don't really care.
Hmm.
right? Even though you are deleting it, on their side, the server side, they still have it, right?
Hmm. All right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes, yes, yes. I
From
got it.
your account, it got deleted, but it's sitting in their server somewhere.
Right, right. Database. Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So that's a testing part.
Okay.
Uh, the testing, again, that's an iterative cycle we have. Let's say that a tester finds a defect. Okay, another job of a tester is to find bugs,
Hmm.
right? To the goal is to break the system. If you are a tester, your
Hmm.
job is to first you have to test whether the system has been coded as per the requirements. That's one goal. The second
Hmm.
goal is to break the system,
Hmm.
right? When I say break the system, that means you want to find the defects in the system before the customer or end user finds it,
Okay.
right? And exactly what you are doing, you were mainly getting all these calls from the end users. They're finding defects or problems in the system, which probably were not identified by the testers in your team, right?
Okay. Okay. Right.
Let's say if they were able to resolve all these issues, or they were able to identify and resolve all these issues, probably you would have been or you won't have received those many tickets,
Hmm. Correct. Correct.
right? It's simple, right? If the
Hmm.
quality of the product is not good, definitely the customers will find it and they will report it.
Right.
They will say, hey, this is not working, that is not working, and you will have to fix them, or you will have to take the request and report it back to the team so that they can fix it. But if
Hmm.
the intrinsic quality is good, then maybe it's not, you won't get those many calls. Maybe here and there few they may call, but it won't be that bad,
Okay.
right? So a lot of times the quality is also determined by the number of production issues reported. And that is one of the key metrics management looks at.
Okay.
So if let's say we build a new system and we give it to the customers to use it.
Hmm.
So the remaining 6 months, the management will track how many tickets were opened against the system, how many were production defects. So if the production defects were high, that means the quality of work was not good, right?
Right. Right. So testing was not done properly.
Testing was everything. The
Okay.
design, maybe there was no issue with the design, but the coding was not done properly. The testing
Hmm.
was not done properly, as you said correctly, right?
Hmm.
Yes, the testers couldn't find the problems or the bugs, and that basically resulted in this issue that instead of testers finding it and fixing it, it went to the end users. They found it and they reported back.
Okay.
Correct? So
Hmm.
definitely, there's a loop here. If a tester finds a defect in the system, they will report it back to the developers, they will fix it, and again give it to the testers to test it.
Hmm. Right.
And a bug can be, let's say the system is not behaving as per the requirements. Let's say the requirement is to allow a user to select the parameters, and when they select to generate a report, it will generate and let them save in PDF Excel. But when the tester is testing it, and when they select the parameters, maybe it's not creating a report, it's giving a blank screen.
Okay. So
Or
it's
if
not
it's
converting that report into PDF format or Word or Excel.
right,
So
or maybe it's creating a report, but it's not letting them save in Excel or
okay.
CSV,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
Or maybe it's creating a report, but it's putting junk characters, whatever the issue is, depending on the issue, but it's a defect. It's not as what the requirement stated, right?
Hmm.
So they will report the bug, and that will be fixed by the development team, by the developers, and again they will be testing it, right? So it's a iterative cycle. As long as that issue is not solved, that loop will continue. Okay, now let's say that the testing is done, and there are different types of testing. Again, we'll talk more. There is a functional testing, there is regression testing, there is integration testing, there is UAT, user acceptance testing, right? There is performance testing. The different types of testing we do. Assuming that the tester has done all different types of testing, and uh, there are no major defects in the system.
Okay.
Now let me put this way, right? There is no system which is defect free, right?
Okay.
You won't find a system which has got 100%, which is 100% defect free. But yes, the level of defects that can be allowed varies depending on the domain, depending on the scenario. Like for example, if I'm building a system to track uh, the heart rate of a heart patient, right? I cannot have a defect, a major defect, right? Maybe there's a small defect which is not impacting the core feature or the core functionalities of the system. That is permissible,
Okay.
right? For example, let's say, I was working on a software application where, the pacemakers, right? Pacemakers.
No.
In the heart, they implant the pacemakers. For people who have weak heart, they have problems with the heart, so they implant the pacemaker to kind of make their heartbeats more systematic and be in rhythm,
Okay. Okay.
right?
Okay.
So what happens is that pacemaker is implanted in the heart of a human being, and then their heartbeats are being monitored, uh, and that data is being sent to an application, and that application will constantly feed the data to different doctors, providers in real time,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So if anything is abnormal, they will get to know, and they will report it back and take an action on that patient.
Okay.
Now, that kind of system, the core capability cannot be compromised, right?
Right. Because it is
You
like
need, yeah, it's a life and death thing, right?
life and death situation. Right.
So you cannot mess up with that part. So you cannot have a defect that will compromise these core capabilities. But there might be some defects outside of that core capabilities that might be acceptable to the customer, and they will accept it, and we can go ahead and implement that system. But let's say that the defect is the heart rates are not being captured properly. What is the value of that system,
That is a no value of system. Right.
right? So it's not a
It's a
defect,
it's
it's
a
a showstopper.
showstopper. Right.
We can't let that system go into production. Or if it's reporting, let's say, a high variance in the heart rate, it's not reporting the right data. Again, there's no value to that system. It's a huge blocker. But compare that with, let's say there's a minor defect in terms of uh, you know sending, let's say it's sending an alert to the doctor, but there's a typo uh, in the UI, on the UI. There's a small typo where it's, instead of saying, um, you know, let's say a particular word, I can't think of it, but let's say some word, there's a typo.
Okay.
Now, it is not a showstopper, right? It's a defect, but I think we can still live with it. We can accept that because it's not impacting the core capability of the system,
Right.
right? Let's say some medical term has been mistyped, but again, we are getting the right data, it's monitoring, it's sending alerts to the right people, and the core capability is not compromised.
Correct.
Correct? Now compare that with an application which we use, let's say our online banking system.
So here
It's
that will create a big loss if there's a typo issue.
right, yeah. Now, yeah, that's a good example. Let's say that instead of you have an account of you have an account with the bank, and instead of you have, let's say, $10,000 in your account, and it says $1,000, right? You will freak out, right? What happened to my $9,000?
$9,000. Right.
So you can see the difference, right? And again, in this example, we don't. It's not about life and death, right? So let's say even if there's a you cannot create a report, right? The system technically should allow you to create reports in different formats, but it's not letting you create. It's not a showstopper. It depends on the customer if they want to go ahead and start using it, right?
Right.
Let's say email application. You can set up your theme depending on what you want, but let's say it's not saving it.
Okay. So every time I'm trying to log in, it is giving me old one only, old theme,
Yeah, it's going back to the default theme,
default theme. Correct.
right?
Okay.
But still, yeah, you're getting all your emails, you're able to send, you're able to receive, you're able to do draft, whatever, right? So it's not a showstopper, but yes, there's a
Showstopper.
defect. There's a defect. I mean, if we want, like, if the customers decides, hey, we want to fix it before we release, then yes, we have to fix it. But sometimes what happens is the customer will say, okay, we will accept some defects, but we want to release it. So it depends on the negotiations we have with the customer, whether they want to go ahead with the set of defects or they want to fix and then release.
Okay.
Okay. So the next phase is implementation or deployment, we call, where now the system is given to the actual end users who are going to use it. So all the work that takes or that goes towards deploying the code into the production environment is what we do in the implementation phase.
Okay. So we are going to deploy that into production.
Correct. Okay. And once we deploy, the system goes into the O&M mode, which we call the operations and maintenance.
Okay.
So in the O&M mode, that's where you worked, right? I mean, you were working with the different stakeholders, end users, to kind of resolve their issues, any problems they had, you were helping them solve those issues.
Right.
Now, O&M phase will have multiple things. Let's say once we have a system in production, you need to maintain it, just like we have to maintain, house, we have to maintain vehicles, right? We have to maintain any product which we buy, right? Whether it's a laptop or a car or a house, we need to maintain it, right? So same thing with this application. So maintenance or operation and maintenance mainly refers to, let's say there's a defect in the system reported by end user, right? We need to fix that.
Right.
Or let's say there's a we need to move to a new version of a database, right? Let's say we are using version 1.2.2 of Oracle, and now we need to move to 1.2.3, right? We need to have people with the right skills to do that upgrade,
Right. Right.
right? Or we need to have some patching done on the code, right? We need to do some hot fixes in the backend or code, whatever it is. We need to have people to do those kind of things.
Right.
So all of that will be done in the O&M phase. And then finally, we will have disposition, which means the system will be now retired, or it will be decommissioned for whether it's, there can be different reasons why you want to decommission it. Maybe now there are no users, there's no user of the system, we don't want to keep maintaining it, or the system has um, now outlived, right? It's
The
hard to
product.
maintain.
Okay.
Yeah, you were saying something?
I mean, product might be changed or something, or
Correct. Right.
they have
Now,
stopped the product, that particular product, or they have stopped in market. So
exactly. Yeah,
using that application will of no use. Okay.
exactly. Yeah, that's correct. So that's a good example. Maybe the business line has stopped selling the product and they don't need that software which is supporting that product, or it
Hmm.
can be that system has been written in a very old language, let's say COBOL, and it's hard to maintain it and hard to integrate with the new applications, because new applications maybe they are written in a more using more modern technologies. So
Hmm.
that old application, legacy application, cannot interface with this new application. S- right? We want to change it. We want to modernize it.
Right. Correct.
Right? Sometimes, right now, I'm working on an application which is very slow. The performance is very slow. So what is happening is, they don't, the end users of the application, they don't like to use that because it's so slow, and it doesn't let them do a lot of things. So they want to retire that application, and they want to have a new application which is built on the latest tech stack, like technology platform.
Okay.
So there can be multiple reasons why you want to decommission an application, and maybe there's a new application which will be replaced, or which will be replacing that old application, or there might be a case, as you said, that they don't need that application anymore because they don't support that product. Um, it's not in the market, and that's why they don't need that application.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so
Understood.
that is the SDLC. Any questions, concerns?
No. No. Understood. So this will be a generic for every software, right?
Correct. That's
Okay.
true.
Any software development. Okay.
Exactly. Any software engineering framework or methodology you're going to use will have these phases.
Okay. So I have to remember these phases because they might ask in interviews, or
Correct.
I might have that. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
You good?
Yes. 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 I got it.
Okay, so let's talk about the waterfall now.
Okay.
Okay, so now we are getting into the different types of frameworks which you will come across. Okay, so the first and foremost is a waterfall model, as you can see here.
Hmm.
Now,
So
the,
I mean to say SDLC is like a methodology, and in order to apply that methodology, we have to make use of certain frameworks. Among
correct,
them,
yes,
Waterfall is one, right?
that's true. Yeah,
Like that. Okay. Okay.
right. So, um, in the waterfall, we have these, as you can see, we here we haven't put the pre-project phase, right? The initiation and the concept development or the discovery phase. We don't have those, but those are assuming that those are done. Okay. Until then, as I said, we don't have a project, so it doesn't really matter which framework you're going to use.
Hmm.
You see my point?
I got your point. Right.
So only when that
Because
project is approved.
because in
Yeah,
planning itself we decide which framework we are going to use.
correct. Yes.
Okay.
So in the waterfall, as you can see, we start from planning, we do the requirements, design, development, deployment, and then testing. Okay.
Hmm.
Sorry, testing and then
And
deployment. My bad. So
testing and
you do the testing and then deployment. So first you do the planning, requirements, design, development, testing, and then you do the deployment. Right? Now, why is it called waterfall? It's very intuitive if uh, if you think like that. Why is it called a waterfall model?
mm, it's like a flow of water. I mean, one
Exactly.
by
Yeah.
one it is coming down.
Correct.
Requirement. I mean, as per this PPT, it shows step by step we are coming down like a flow of water.
Correct. Just like a waterfall is, right? If you see a waterfall, it will always go uh, from top to bottom, or it will take the path of least resistance, right? It will flow where the gravity is.
Right.
You won't see any natural waterfall which will go from bottom to upwards. I mean, it will always go from
Top
top to
to
bottom,
bottom. Right.
right? So what it means is that just like the waterfall goes and it won't come back, right? You won't see water coming in a reverse direction once it goes.
Right.
Same thing with this SDLC. You need to go in a very linear, structured fashion. So as you can see that you have planning phase, requirements, design, development, uh, testing, and then you deploy the software. So
Hmm.
in this model, you proceed in a very in logical fashion through a sequence of steps or phases. And in each phase, you will do certain activities,
Hmm.
right? One second. Each
Yeah,
phase
sure.
you will do the same thing, right? It's nothing is changing. Like planning, you will do the planning, requirements, the BA will be working, design, the
Hmm.
architect will be working,
Hmm.
but you are working in a very structured fashion. That means only when the planning is done, you will go to the requirements. Only when the requirements are complete, you will go to the design. Likewise, only when the design is complete, you will start development. And the development is kind of more or less 80% complete, you will start testing, right? And then you do the deployment. So the idea of waterfall was to have everything nailed down before you go to the next steps or next phase.
Okay.
Okay. So for example, um, I start a project using waterfall model. So
Hmm.
as a PM, I will complete the whole planning and then we will start the requirements. Then let's say you are a BA, you will start the requirements with your team and complete it, and then you go to the design. Then the architect will come in and create the architecture, and then we start the development. So you see, there's a very structured and very compartmentalized approach we are following. And the negative aspect of this model is there is hardly any scope to get back or come back and do anything. Like you cannot go back to a previous phase and repeat those activities without impacting the cost and the schedule of the project.
Okay.
So let's say that you are a BA, right? You worked in this requirements phase.
Hmm.
You spend like 2 months doing the requirements with your team.
So again, I will be having a fixed period of time, which will be
Yes,
given
of
by
course.
product manager
Yeah,
itself.
definitely.
So
Yeah,
in this waterfall model, each and every phase will have fixed period of time.
obviously, definitely, yes. Right.
Okay.
So you will be given, let's say, 2 months to do the requirements.
Hmm.
So during these 2 months, you will talk to the SMEs and get the requirements, and then you will get them reviewed, you will get them approved, and then they are locked. We baseline them. So once you are done with the requirements phase, there is no scope for changes to the requirements, right? We lock them. And let's say we go to the design phase, and during the design phase, we get to know that the requirements are changing, right? What happens? Now we need to go back to the requirements phase, open it, again do them, and again come to the design phase.
Yeah, ideally that is what we have to do.
Correct? That is what we should do.
Mm.
And that is going to lead to uh, a loss of time,
Yes, again, right.
right? Rework, more cost,
Mm.
right? So all these things will kind of kick in. That is going to impact the project in a negative way.
Okay. So again, it will costing will be more, right?
Exactly. And worse if we are in the development phase. Let's say in the development phase, the code has been written, and now the customer says, hey, I want to change this requirement. And the code is already written. Now you see the impact is more cascading. We go to the requirements, now we update it. Maybe the design or the architecture may not get impacted, but
Mm.
definitely the code will be impacted. So again, the developer has to update the code, right? So
Mm.
the work they did is already gone. It's a sunk cost. We cannot recover it, correct? So the code
Right.
that was written has to be either thrown away completely or has to be refactored.
Right.
So now not only the work they did in the past is gone in vain, but they need to spend more time to write the code or to update the code. That is more money, more time.
Mm.
You see the impact, right?
Right.
So this model is good if the customers are clear what they want and they are able to give the requirements and never change them.
Okay.
Okay. If the
So,
requirements are going to change or if they want to keep it flexible, then this model is not the right one.
the example which you told me earlier, like the hospital one, heart attack
Mhm.
one. So
Yeah,
that we can use this, so I mean waterfall model to for that for that kind of application because it is a fixed.
we right. If the customers say that this is we are clear what we want, then yes, we can go with this
Okay. Okay.
waterfall. But if the customer says, the requirements will change, we don't know, then
Mm.
it's a big risk to use this framework because if we use this framework and the requirements change, then there's an impact. Now here's a caveat: the requirements can change, that's fine, but then if we are using a waterfall model, then we have to say that okay, we will use waterfall model, but we will have different releases: release 1, release 2, release 3. So if the requirements change, we can always take those changes in the next release and fix it.
Okay. So again, there will be a delay.
That yes, that is a yeah, that's a negative part of it. There will be a delay,
Mm.
right? Another thing, yes, what you said is right. Time to market. That is, if you want to release the product, right, with what we call the MVP, minimum viable product,
Mm.
then this model is not the right one. This framework is not the right one. You should go with Agile. And a lot of companies, a lot of corporations, they are going with that concept of MVP. That is minimum viable product. So
Oh,
what I mean by
repeat.
MVP is,
Mm.
uh, let me give a very simple example, right? Okay, let's say that you want a phone, right?
Mm.
Uh, Now these days, we just think about the smartphones, right? Uh, this may not be a good example. Okay, let's say this one. You want to have a TV built.
Okay.
What is the primary purpose of TV?
So obviously you should have a proper audio and the video.
right? You should have proper audio video,
Village
and you
basic
should be
requirement.
right, and you should be able to subscribe to a channel, right? Whosoever is the
Right.
provider, satellite channels.
Hmm.
That is a basic value of a TV,
Hmm.
correct? So that is what we call the MVP, minimum viable product. What is
Okay.
the least you you will you want to see in the product so that you can accept it and start using it.
Okay.
But of course, on top of it, you want to have features like, you want to install apps, you want to remove
HD.
apps,
Hmm.
right? You want to have, let's say,
High
live
definition.
streaming, high
Yes, right.
definition, right? You want to
Graphics,
integrate your TV with, let's say, other,
multiplexing,
which one?
multiplexing. You can
Multiplexing, gaming, all of that, right?
gaming everything.
So these are something beyond MVP.
Right. These are like features we can say.
These are additional capabilities that you would like to see in addition to that basic capability,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So MVP is pretty important concept. Let's take some more examples. Okay, let's say that you want to buy a new car. So what all do you want in the car at a basic minimum, bare bone? What should the car have? It should have a good, uh,
It should have.
of,
Hmm.
yeah,
It should. It should have a good engine, then good tires, and make sure that it should have a proper body, car
right,
body,
body,
which are yeah, which are minimal and proper seats.
exactly. So if we sum it up, it should be, let's say I want a new car, right? I want to have a four-door sedan. It should have a good safety features, good exterior, right? It should have a solid exterior. I don't want something like a plastic or which will crash, just by hitting a pole. I want
Hmm.
a like a solid structure outside. I want to have comfortable interior,
Hmm.
correct? I want to have good safety features. I want to have a good fuel mileage, correct?
Hmm.
Low in maintenance. These are my basic I need in my vehicle. Apart from that, whether it's a cloth seat, leather seat, whether it will have a steering heating system, heating system, will it have a, what you call the the blind spot uh, system, right?
Hmm.
It will
Hmm.
have a, what do you call, uh, what is the other thing? Like, all those small things which
Okay,
you really,
like
it's not,
AC,
it's good. Yeah,
audio
high
features.
definition audio system. It
Yes,
will have a
yes, right.
GPS, built-in GPS,
GPS, built-in
right?
GPS, right.
All of these
Hmm.
things are good to have. I mean, my car will still have the same basic value, even if I don't have these things. So my minimum viable product is it should have these things to begin with,
Right.
correct? So
Okay.
the point I was trying to make is, uh, even if the requirements are not going to change, right? You can still use Agile Scrum if the customer wants this MVP to be delivered sooner than later. Because if you are using waterfall model, you need to have the whole product built before you can release it,
Okay.
right? You cannot do partial releases if you are using waterfall model. But if you are using Agile Scrum, you can have partial releases as long as you are releasing, uh, you know, those features in that product.
I mean, we can deliver MVP.
Yes, you can keep delivering MVP with each release.
Okay.
Right, so that is one of the biggest plus point if you're using a Scrum framework. Waterfall will not let you do this because it's everything or nothing, right? You release the whole system or you don't release. Whereas in Agile, you can release in big chunks, in small chunks.
Okay. So is it cost effective comparative to waterfall?
Yes, of course, it is cost effective. It is much more, you know, helpful for the companies because they can keep pushing the software at a regular intervals with new features, new capabilities. That is more acceptable than waiting for like one full year for the customers to get the product.
Okay.
And probably you might have heard or seen, these big IT companies like Facebook or Google, Netflix, Uber, they release so frequently. They don't wait for like 6 months, 8 months to release. Every day they have some new enhancements made to their application. Now you don't realize it, right? Because they do it so fast and on a continuous basis, you don't realize, but they have these releases going on almost every day, every second, third day.
Okay.
And the way they do is, or the reason why they can do is because they are using Agile framework. In Waterfall, they will not, they cannot do this way.
Okay.
Clear?
Yes, yes, yes. Now it's clear. So it's like in waterfall, we have to go one by one. I mean, we have to first complete one phase, then we can jump to another phase.
That's
Right,
correct. We
right.
need to go
Okay.
every phase we have to complete before we can go to the next phase. And at the end
Next
of
phase.
each phase, there will be some checkpoints to see if we have completed that phase, all the activities are done, all the artifacts have been created, reviewed, approved by somebody. Only then we can move to the next phase.
Okay.
Whereas in other frameworks, mainly in Agile, you will see it's so fluid and so flexible that you don't have that kind of a process, rigid process.
Okay. Okay. So it is flexible, cost effective, and more importantly, we can I mean can work as per the requirements.
Right. And you can release the MVP more
Release
frequently.
them more frequently. Right.
Right. So I mean, if no questions, we can move on.
Yes, sure.
Okay. So in waterfall model, we need to think about this. There's a concept of iron triangle, which is the scope, cost, and schedule. So this is more like a PM term, project management term, iron triangle. So what we say, what it means is that
Mm.
if we are using a waterfall model, we are constrained by these three elements: scope, cost, and schedule. So scope is nothing but the requirements, the work that's going to be done as part of the project. So scope has got two different terms here. I mean, two different concepts. One is a product scope and project scope. So product scope is any capability that is going to be built in that system, software. That's what we call the product scope. And the project scope is the work that will take to build that product, all the activities that's going to be done in order to build that product.
No, I didn't
So,
get the
so let
product
me,
scope.
yeah, so let me give an example, okay? So let's say you want to make a cake, right? Let's say there's a birthday coming up and you want to bake a cake, correct?
Hmm.
So there are two things here. One is you will say, okay, what type of cake I want to make? I want to make a chocolate cake with let's say, vanilla as a base, chocolate on top with some fudge, and I
Hmm.
want to have some icing on the cake with a name written on the cake, right? And
Hmm.
it should be it should have some ice cream layer in it, and right, that is your cake description.
Hmm.
Now you need to have steps involved to make it as well, correct? You will go to the shop to buy all the ingredients, then you will come home, you will do some prep work, you will bake these different things, you will put, then one by one everything together, and then you will bake it at a certain temperature. You will take it out. Once it's done, you will keep it in the fridge. So these are activities you did to build that product, correct? So the product
Right.
scope is the the cake itself that you build, that it will have vanilla, it will have chocolate, it will have fudge, it will have icing, it will have ice cream. That's my product scope. And the project scope is all the activities that you did to build that product, which is a cake in this example.
Okay. So it's like pre-steps sort of thing we can consider as a product requirement.
The product scope is the capabilities that's going to be supported by the system. So let's take more realistic example. You go to your online banking system, right? What all it
Hmm.
supports? It lets you create your account, update account, create your login. You can log in, you can see your uh, transactions in real time. You
Hmm.
can make payments the to the providers. You can transfer funds to your friends, family through
Right.
transaction, right? You can request for a credit increase. All of that you can do it through the system. So that's a product scope. The project scope is the activities that took to build that product. So we
So,
did the
so,
requirements. Let's say we did the planning.
hmm. Uh,
So
so,
so the PM did the planning, the BA did the requirements,
hmm.
right? The
Hmm.
architect did the design, developers wrote the code, testers tested it,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Then somebody deployed it, and there was a team who maintained it. These are
Testing.
the activities that were involved. Yeah, testing. These were the activities that were involved in building that product. So that's a project scope.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay. So what we
So,
are saying is, yeah,
I mean to
I will
say,
share one YouTube link with you, which will give you. It's a like 15-minute video I created on a product and project scope. That might help you more.
okay, sure.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
you had a question. Go ahead.
No, no, that's what I just I was trying to say what I understood. I mean, it's like suppose in terms of project, it will be it will be all actions which we need to take in order to create
Correct.
that project, a particular thing, okay,
Correct.
product, and when it comes to my product part, sorry, what's the second term you said?
The product scope.
Product scope. So product scope is nothing but the, no, again it is actions only.
The product scope will be the features that's going to be part of the product. Think
Features.
about it,
Okay, feature. Okay, I got.
right?
Okay. Hmm. Okay. Okay. Hmm. Understood. Okay.
Okay. And
Hmm.
here what we are saying is in the waterfall model, we are constrained with these three elements. Like if we have the scope in place, if we say that that's my scope, the product and project scope, based on that we do the costing, and based on that we come up with the schedule, right? That is how much it's going to cost to complete the scope,
Hmm.
to complete the scope, and how much time it's going to take to do that work.
Project and product,
Both, correct.
both, for both. Okay.
Now, if anything changes, let's say we change the scope, we add some more scope. What's going to happen? It's going to increase the cost and time, right?
Hmm. Right.
More work means more cost, more time. Simple.
Right. So either of two, anything we change, again it will obviously affect to costing and schedule as well.
Right. And same thing with other as well. Let's say we change any, basically what we are trying to say is we change any one variable, it's going to impact the remaining two. So let's say I change the scope, it will impact the cost and schedule. It will go up. Of course, if I reduce the scope, it will go down, right? If the scope gets reduced, the cost will get reduced and the schedule will also get reduced.
It will shrink. Okay, shrink.
Shrink. Let's say I cut the budget. Instead of 1 million, I say, okay, now I give only 500K to do the
Hmm.
project.
Hmm.
That means now I cannot do the scope as I planned,
Right.
right? And of course, the schedule will also get impacted.
Right.
Same thing,
Right.
if I cut the schedule, if I say, hey, instead of 1 year, I just give you 3 months to do it. I cannot give you the same scope,
So
right? If you want,
they are like directly proportional,
exactly. Now,
dependent on each other, cost and schedule.
right. Now, if the customer says, no, I want you to do the same scope in 3 months, then give me more money. I will put more people and get you done. That's another option, but it's going to impact the cost, correct?
Hmm. Right. Correct. But in all cases, requirements will be fixed because it is a waterfall model.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay.
And we are seeing the impact if they change the requirements. What is the impact? Right? The impact is always negative. It's going to impact the cost and schedule. So that's why we call iron triangle. You change any variable, one variable, you will see the impact to the remaining two.
But suppose I change the cost. Okay. Instead of 2 million, suppose I change cost to 1 million.
Mhm.
Obviously, schedule will shrink and requirement.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot deliver the same scope if you don't give me enough money,
Right.
right? I mean, it's like, initially you said that, let's say you want to get your work done, right? You want to get your uh, kitchen remodeled, let's say,
Hmm.
correct? And
Hmm.
you decided that I want these things to be done, and I give you, and the cost is, let's say, 1,000 pounds.
Hmm.
And then you say, I don't have 1,000 pounds, I have only 500 pounds. Now, the guy
Hmm.
who's going to do is not going to give you the same work,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
That person will say, okay, you give me less money, I give you just half the amount of work that I promised.
Correct. Understood. So ultimately, everything will be affect requirements, cost, and schedule.
Mhm.
Uh, so even if we make changes in any of three, like requirements, cost, or schedule, it will affect rest two others. I mean, rest two.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So in waterfall, there will be always fixed requirement.
That is the idea. That is the idea that if you are using waterfall model, the assumption is once you are done with the requirements, it won't change. Okay. And
Okay.
what we are seeing is if they change, then this is the impact.
That's what we have to make aware to customer as well. This
Exactly.
is the
Yes.
cost.
Correct.
Hmm. Right. Okay. Understood.
right? So I think we can stop here. I don't want to overload you with,
Sure, sure, sure.
right?
No issues. Fine.
So tomorrow, what we'll do is we'll continue with this and talk about the other frameworks and also the stakeholder concept,
Okay, okay, okay.
right?
So, how will you share the video now? I mean, how will I
I
get the
will, I
video?
will, yeah, I will give you, I will share it with a link, and then I will also post it on the portal.
Okay, okay. So you will share me the portal link as well. I
Yes,
mean,
correct. I'll do that.
how
Yeah,
it will work. Okay, okay,
yeah.
sure.
Okay.
So tomorrow same time, right?
Same time. Yeah,
Okay. For me it is 2. Okay. For you
correct.
it will be early morning, 9 o'clock.
Yeah,
Right?
minus nine. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay. Do
Okay.
let me know if you have any changes or no issues for me.
No, I think no, we are fixed. Let's fix this time.
Okay. I mean, if you want to get a nice sleep or like that, you can
No,
tell
no.
me.
I get up early, but today I was a bit late. I got up at
Okay.
7:30, but generally I'm up by 6, even on the weekends.
Okay. It will be not like a waterfall, It will be agile for us.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay then.
Thanks.
See you.
Thank you.
I'll see you tomorrow then. Bye.
Sure. Okay. Bye. 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 Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.